Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome hair and makeup designer Kirstin Chalmers, who joins us to talk about her work on Netflix's Scoop. Kirstin will talk us through the creative decisions that were made to create the various looks for the film. Please be warned there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Kirstin. Hi, Kirstin. Thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure. Good to be here. Thank you.
We're here to talk about Scoop that's just been released on Netflix, which I think has been sort of like an anticipated film for me. I'm not sure about others when it was sort of when you first saw the first teaser for it, and there's sort of like I was quite excited to watch it, and I managed to watch it over the weekend. But how have you found the reception of the film?
Oh, very, very, very positive indeed. I mean, there's been quite a lot of press, and I was hopeful that it would be really good because at the time when we were working on it, there's some really interesting aspects of the story. The characterization was great. The original interview was astounding, and the hope was to we could pull it off, it would be fabulous. And it seems that the response has been generally extremely positive and very, just brilliant. And I'm really proud. I'm really proud to have been part of it.
It's funny as like audience members, like we saw this interview live or kind of saw snippets of it on the web, but then like as we're like going back to watching it, and I think there's also the thrill of seeing how it was put together and what people thought it was a good idea with it. But then I think there's also the journalistic side where
Mm-hmm.
we as audience members, I don't know, there's always that sort of weird thrill of like seeing how all these things come together.
Yeah, absolutely. As the journalistic side, I think is really important because where would we be without people who bring us the news and who challenge various viewpoints and find out hopefully the truth behind various aspects of life. So finding out about Sam McAllister and the whole Newsnight team and Emily Maitlis, and that world is I find it very fascinating, very interesting because it's obviously I'm not being in the film world, we're doing stories as well, but from a just totally different perspective. It was very interesting to meet Sam and read her book and find out about her side of the story, and all of that was good, really interesting.
I guess as well, like having something based on real life events as well, you could have so many different references and also
Mm.
maybe feel a bit like you want to be true to like the characters of
Oh, absolutely.
how they behaved and what they did. And
When I start researching for a film, if I've got whatever it is, you've got the script, and then on this, we had the Sam McAllister's book, which is it's based, it's what Scoop. This particular interview is one of the stories within her book, and just reading her book about how she would pursue a story, I suppose, or find out about an interview or creating the interviews, and that was very, very interesting. And that's how I sort of started the research for the project. Was first read the book, find out exactly all I can about the character, about Sam, and then were very lucky and we had access to Sam as well, and she was very forthcoming, and we went for a drink and chatted to her about how she felt about her character, how she felt about the story, how she is as a person, and she was very, very open with herself. So that was a great starting point. That was fantastic. And then of course I would research. I've watched the interview about 1,000 times. I've have pictures of Emily, of Sam, of Newsnight, of Prince Andrew, like all over the makeup room, where we were doing all the prep. You suddenly do a deep dive back into that interview and other interviews, and just really look at what people look like, what they look like, what their mannerisms are, what makes them them, as far as I could possibly tell from the information that I can get on the web, and then take it from there. And then because at that stage when I was asked to do the film by Philip, who I've worked with before, we didn't have guaranteed actors. They hadn't signed on the dotted line. So I was like, he was like, I think this is who I've approached. This is who I hope is going to do the show. I really hope he wanted me to do it, which is fantastic. And I love working with him. So that's a great thing to be asked to do. And they were like, okay, Sam thinks we think that Billie Piper is going to play Sam. Right. Okay. She looks very different in real life to her. Sam's very tall. Billie's not, so is a little bit shorter. Billie had black hair. Sam's got platinum blonde hair. Billie's got a little bit more olive skin. Sam's very, very pale. They're like, okay, that's going to be quite a challenge. So then you start putting the pictures of the actors together with the real people and go, how can I turn this from that person into that person? Where do they meet in the middle? What do I have to do? What will work and what won't work? And then as Gillian came on the scene, okay, again, Gillian's got different hair, different eyes, different shaped face, different shaped head, different height, all of those things. Like, how do we make that work? And then, of course, with Rufus, that's quite a challenge. So Rufus has got a very almost diamond-shaped face with his very chiseled cheekbones, and Prince Andrew's quite long in the face and quite almost like a lozenge, is quite round like that. And that's going to be quite a challenge to make that face work with that face. And you just keep looking and looking and looking and looking and analysing and going, okay, I think that will work. This will work. We can move the hair. We can change the weight. Do we use prosthetics on everybody? Do we just do it? We had to do it on Rufus because no one is going to believe him as Prince Andrew without any prosthetics. So that was a definite, we're going to do that. But do we need to use them on anybody else? And we're like, once I started playing with hair and testing wigs and doing makeup tests, we're like, no, I don't think we need to. They are, we can get the essence of both of those women without the need for prosthetics. And I'm always of the opinion that prosthetics are a very, very brilliant tool, but you have to use them so carefully and so precisely if you're doing real characterization, not monsters or fantasy creatures. If you're doing somebody who's real, they have to be so well executed and so beautifully painted and created and sculpted and applied that if you mess up at all, you've lost the magic. The viewer will suddenly be looking for the join rather than believing the characterization.
I just want to go back to the research stage because
sorry,
I guess
I rambled on there.
No, it's okay because it's again I don't want to be rude and interrupt because there's a lot of interesting things being told, and sometimes you kind of just okay, make a mental note of the gold that's being told to you. But the first thing is the research stage, because when you have something that's based on real people, you probably have endless supply of images or and even as you said, mentioning watching the interview 1,000 times, is there points where you kind of took stills of how people were moving in terms of their sort of facially? It's the same with something like Prince Andrew, because he's Rufus is under so much prosthetics that you would need to find a way of maybe how his neck would move or how eyes would be blinking as well.
Absolutely. You'd look at as much footage as you possibly can, and the things that I did. The prosthetics were very much part. Christian Mallet was a prosthetics designer, and I was a co-designer of that. But we both came together very closely, and was going. We want him to feel when it's almost like Prince Andrew's collars are a little tiny bit too tight, so his neck sort of sits over it, and it was really important, I think, to get the jowly chin right and the weight around the back of his neck, to get all of that exactly the right weight, and to make sure that it moved in the way that as far as possible, the way that real skin moves and real fatty deposits or looser middle-aged skin works. And those are really, really, that was a really really important thing. So we did, Kirstin did a couple of sculpts, and the first one it was maybe more accurate to the way that Prince Andrew really looks, but it didn't work so well on Rufus's face. It was a little bit too heavy for his face. So he did another sculpt and moved things around a little bit. And we tried some crepey eyelids on Rufus, but then we were like, well, we lost too much of Rufus then. And Rufus's face, his eyes are so expressive, and as an actor, you want to be able to see his eyes. So we took that away and put in a slightly different bridge of the nose and slightly different forehead, and I moved the hairline of the wig further back. And we're changing every time you make a change in one area of the face or the sculpt, you make a change in another one, like a painting or like a sculpture. You move one bit or one color and you move, then it changes the whole thing. So you're moving it again. So it's a constant reappraisal of what works and what doesn't work. And also, when you look at Prince Andrew, he's got very distinctive teeth, for instance. So I had some false teeth made, some veneers, fake veneers by Fangs Effects, who make everything. They're fantastic, top and bottom. But the way that Prince Andrew's mouth works, you see more of his top teeth. But when the way that Rufus's mouth works, you see more of his bottom teeth. So you can't change that. That's just the way his whole skull and musculature works. So we ended up not using the top teeth because they became humorous. They look like, they just look like joke teeth. So that was a disaster. But the bottom teeth worked really well. And I think we had a couple of plumpers in there as well to push his jaw and his lip out a little bit more. And that was just like, well, that's just brilliant. It worked brilliantly because then you get the essence of the character you're trying to play, but you still retain a certain element of Rufus so that he feels comfortable with all the appliances on him, and he feels like he can just, once we got it right, he was just like, this is it. I don't even need to think about this anymore. I can just walk out the door and be Prince Andrew. That's it. And that's the aim that's what you're always aiming for as a makeup artist, is to make sure that, you want the actor to completely trust your process and the process that you both have worked out together. It's always a collaboration. So that when they walk out that makeup trailer or the hair trailer or that's it. They are totally happy. They don't even need to think about the way they look because that's my job. So they can go off and do their job. That's generally the plan. Anyway.
Do you ever find it like, I know this is part of your work and all, but do you ever find it, even though you have that research and development phase of what's going to work and what's not going to work, but once you see the final makeup test and once Rufus is on set, do you still get blown away by being like, wow, we've created that? That's scary,
always.
like
yeah. I do, but I'm always going, can it be better? Can it be better? Can it be better? It'll keep me awake at night until the job is over, and even then some. There's always something. Is it better in that light or in daylight or in studio light? Or could the shape of the way the hair is dressed, could it be that little bit more perfect to give it a little bit more realism? There's always, if you sit back and go, job done, day one, you can forget it, because something always comes up. There's always something that'll keep you on your toes for some reason or another. The room might be too hot, the makeup, the prosthetic might lift, the wig might lift. You can never be 100% satisfied. You just always, because the only thing that really matters is what's on screen. And if you take your eye off the ball at all, then you might lose. Then that might be the moment that close up is in the film and nobody else has noticed it. And then you see it up there and you're like, that's that day I had a cold and I didn't concentrate, something like that. And it will drive you crazy. That'll keep you awake for years, So. Bit of a perfectionist. I'd like to be, I'm not very good at letting things go. I'd say I always think there's something else that can be done, improved on. It'll drive everybody crazy. But that's the way I am.
But that's like, as someone who's head of the department as well, it's,
Yeah,
you know,
that's my job.
yeah, that's your job, is to basically
Yeah.
have them ready for set and have that,
Mm.
be perfect effectively. It's just funny to hear as well, like how, you could be on set and there'll be the moments where a certain light might be used and you could see something might be slipping or doesn't dry
Mm.
properly. There's
Mm.
actually on Netflix's behind the scenes YouTube channel, there's a really cool time lapse of you guys transforming Rufus into Prince Andrew.
Yes.
And even like watching that is incredible because even
Hmm.
though I'm guessing it probably took about 4 to 5 hours to get him made up.
So it was
Um,
actually, it started off at about 3.5 hours and we got it down to 2.5
oh
at the
wow.
end. So yeah, so it's pretty good. Well, yeah, it was a bit longer for the day that he was in the bath because you had to do all this bit, but you had to do all his shoulder line, blend that in more than you would do when it's underneath the shirt. So, but generally you got it down to 2.5 hours, so that helped.
Well, even but for when you're prepping someone for that long of time,
Hmm.
because you guys need to stay on the ball, but then also Rufus just needs to sit still.
Mm.
How do you
Hmm.
guys engage one another that you kind of concentrate, but then also make him feel comfortable?
You have good chairs. You have a good chair. Have a good chair. He has a hot coffee break when he needs it. Gets up, has a coffee break. You just, he knows. Actors know the process, and also he likes to talk some of the times. Sometimes he likes to be quiet. And you literally go. You have the music or the radio on, or not, depending on what they like. Sometimes they want to just concentrate on the script. Every actor is different in their process, and you sort of evolve. You learn a shorthand with each person to find out what they like in the chair in the morning. Do they like to chat? Do they like it noisy? Others like it completely quiet and silent. And so you go through the process. It's each person is individual, and that's kind of what makes the job interesting as well. So you never know really. If you haven't worked with people before, then it's always it takes a bit of time in the beginning, and the main thing is to build up the trust, between you both, so that you're both, of course, you're all working towards the same end. You want to create a great piece of filmmaking. So, you don't want to make the time in the makeup chair has got to be as pleasant as possible for everybody, because everybody starts the day in the right way.
Yeah, and it's also, as you said, comfortable chairs and understanding what somebody likes and what they don't like.
Mm,
And each person
yeah,
is different in their process. Like I can imagine people who are creative in their own way that they sort of just want to take some time to
yeah,
relax and think about it, and then
absolutely, absolutely. It's always part of the process, and you become very attuned to what somebody likes or dislikes, and that's just part of the job. And they also obviously appreciate what you've got to do. I've got to turn into that character. So it's a collaboration always.
it's mental as well to think because as audience members you only see the sort of actor, but then it's all the little pieces that each department bring that actor,
Hmm.
make that actor into their character.
Hmm.
Because sometimes we do think about them just as performance wise. It's like it's also the clothes they're wearing, the makeup,
Absolutely,
um,
absolutely.
the
I
environment, the
had to,
production design.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just, we didn't, we Christian and Robin didn't just put the prosthetics on. You got the prosthetics, then they've ought to be blended and painted. Then there's the wig goes on. That's been made specifically for him, and it's made in a couple of pieces so that the nape is knotted in a particular way so that it lies flat against the head. I had to bleach up Rufus's eyebrows and then add in, because Rufus's eyebrows go up at the end and Andrew's go down. I had to add in individual eyebrow hairs to make sure that the shape is exactly right. Then, of course, there's the teeth. Then I think he had a padded costume underneath, and then the suits are all made for him. So it's lots and lots of little individual things that come together. And then, of course, Ruth's own fabulous performance to top it all off.
Yeah, and I bet it's probably quite easy as well, knowing that everybody's worked so hard to get you into that look, that
Oh,
to sink into
it's
the role as well.
it's great. Yeah, it's good. It's very good. I mean, he was. He was in LA in the time, so it was quite tricky for us to get access to him in the beginning. When we didn't, I think we only had, I had 6 weeks prep on the film. It wasn't a massive budget at all, and that was including Christmas. And wig makers don't work over Christmas. Things all shut down over Christmas. So I think Rufus is in LA, so we had to get a head scan, 3D head scan, sent over from LA to give to Kirstin to do, so that he could make a 3D Rufus, and then he would sculpt that, so that by the time, and then they had a, I think in the beginning of January, we had a week's rehearsal, and Rufus came over for that. So that's when we could do the first test. And fortunately for us, we were then started shooting the following week, and then we had another 3 weeks where the changes could be made. The hair needed to be changed. It wasn't quite right. The shape of it wasn't quite right. The hairline wasn't quite right. The prosthetics needed to be changed very slightly. The teeth needed to be changed. So it was thank God we had those 3 weeks in order to make those changes before he came and shot the interview. So his first day was like, the interview. We'd been shooting for 3 weeks with all the Newsnight team, and a lot of Gillian and Billy's work as well.
As like a HOD, how do you balance that, knowing that you've got your shoot happening where you need to concentrate on your principal cast, but then in the back of your mind, you also need to be wary about what's coming up in the few weeks ahead, knowing that you had to be prepared for the prosthetic shoot as well?
Well, you do a lot of managing, a lot of delegation, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. It's juggling. Yeah, you've got, and I've got a great team, and I don't make the wig. I don't do all those things. I oversee and design, and I looked after Gillian on set mostly, and I was there all the time. So, it's just managing and overseeing everything. That's what you do, and use your team. And I've got specific makeup artists and hairdressers for Billy and for Romola, and my team was actually quite small. There were, with that not including Rufus's prosthetic team, I think there were 5 of us to look after all of the cast, plus the Rufus's prosthetics team. So that's not a lot of people to look after, Billy and Gillian and Romola and Leah, all of whom are wearing wigs, all of whom have makeup, and the rest of the Newsnight team as well. And then we had some crowd makeup and hair people to look after any crowd that were required. It's tiny. It's a tiny team.
I guess I always find it interesting how the team dynamic works on a shoot as well, because as you said, there is a lot of delegating, a lot of sort of getting stuff into place. Basically, you need to be prepared for whatever's going to happen, and having the right people with the right actors as well.
Absolutely,
it's fairly important as well.
Yeah, you have to. I like to work with people that I have worked with before, and who've got particular, depending on what the requirements for each individual job are. I like to choose a team that I've worked with before as far as possible, or very importantly, and have the particular skill set required for whatever that job entails. And when it's a small job, and so you've only got a budget for a small amount of people, their talents and their personalities are very, very important. And they're all individual people, and then obviously and so therefore are each are slightly different. And then you just work out when you meet the actors, you're like, well, I think they will work with that. With this personality will not clash with that personality. You want to have a variety of people, because you have a variety of actors, and some people get on better with some people than others, so which is human nature. So that's what I try and do as well, is to have a happy team and a happy crew, so that we get the job done. Because there's enough other problems that will always come up to sort of rock the boat. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you need those people in the trenches next to you when the shit hits the fan. Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
and for them not to complain as well, just get on with it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
what I'm also curious about is because I think you touched upon it slightly earlier.
Hmm.
The the film itself is as it's based on real people, and you'd have an actor who wouldn't necessarily look like the correct person, or there'll be
Mm.
changes that needed to be made. So like a wigs or the way that somebody's skin might be different to another person's skin. How do you go about like making these sort of changes? Because there's stuff that you need to make sure that people are comfortable with. Then also, do you think that it hinders your creativity in creating looks when you have a show based on real people?
I don't think it hinders my creativity. I think it's that you have to sort of see each job as an individual project. If you're going to do a fantasy drama, then generally you would have there would have been some kind of indication as to what those characters would look like. It's very rare that you go right, and also the script, even on a fiction, will describe to a certain degree the kind of characters that those people are. So even within the story, you've already got certain limitations, which I always see as a positive thing, because if you're just given a blank canvas, what I might like might be difficult to what you like, to what they like. So you're gonna it's like saying, do you like Picasso or do you like Van Gogh? You know, who's right? Nobody's right. It's just different. So to have to have real people to base the characters on, it's just a different way of looking at creativity. It's like going, you know, like I said, I don't want to make somebody who's absolutely identical, because the actor won't be able to work with it with a just a mask. It will look like a mask because it won't take into consideration the way that their own facial muscles work. So you've got to always make a hybrid, I think, to make it believable, so that the audience stops questioning where the makeup begins and ends and starts to just believe it as a character. So the creativity is not like, I want to go and put, you know, pink hair in Emily Maitness. I mean, that'd be stupid. So it's about the creativity, I think, comes within really delving down into the minutiae of the detail and going, how can we make this person believable? What, you know, will it be, is when you go and, for instance, when you go and choose the hair color, you go down to the wig makers and you look at their hair and go, well, in an ideal world, I would have Billie Piper with me, but she wasn't available. So you're going to go with a picture of Billie and a picture of Sam and go, well, this is the color that we think it is. But then you have maybe 20, 30 different colors of blonde. So you've got to choose, and different textures of blonde hair. And you're like, well, how do I know which one is going to be right? And you have to go with it. I sort of get, I mean, a coloring, an instinct as what you think might work, and take them away and hopefully see. And then, and because wigs and hair take so long to make, you don't get the time to just go, I'd wait until I can see Billie, put it up against her face, put some makeup on, see what the color is going to be like. You're just going to go, I hope it's going to be this. And then we'll have to dye the root so that you get that good natural base tone going up into the, and then to going more blonde down towards the end. It's like, those are the sort of creative aspects that I find really interesting. Is going to choose to make it feel, what are those, what is that color mix in that hair that you're going to get, because you have maybe 3 or 4 different colors to make it work. And so it's a more subtle but just as interesting process, I think. And the same with Gillian's wig. Again, Gillian has a slightly paler skin to Emily. Emily's quite tanned. And also, Emily's got darker eyebrows and she's got dark brown eyes. And Gillian's got green blue eyes and is paler and is a more natural blonde anyway. But Gillian's hair is quite gold. Emily's is dark bleached blonde. So it's getting switching that, going which colours will work with her face, with different eyes on her face, different eyebrows on Gillian's face, having to tan Gillian up to make her skin tone a bit more the similar sort of colour as Emily's tan skin. So it's all a question of degrees, and it's those kind of creative choices that I quite like doing. It's fun, but it's subtle. It's not like, let's make them 1960s or let's make them 1940s. Let's do a big sort of wave here and bright red lips. It's a much more subtle approach, which I think when you get it right is invisible, but there's still been a lot of creativity in the process and a lot of decision making in that process to get to that. And it's a different way of being creative, I suppose.
Again, it's amazing to think how much consideration and thought needs to go into people's looks and what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I do love hearing that sort of like, well, the first things, I'm amazed by how many shades of blonde that there is.
There are more than that.
Yeah. Well,
You
that's
literally
like...
have drawers of hair and you're like, oh Lord, and it's also the different textures, because even with within the realm of Caucasian hair, obviously that's what I'm dealing with on this particular film for Gillian and for Billy. You've got straight, and also you don't know necessarily where the hair that you're looking at has come from. So it could have been very natural Northern European, Russian blondes, which is much finer, going through down to a dyed, more thicker shaft of hair, I suppose, which is like a Mediterranean hair, or even an Indian hair that's been bleached up. You've got, it's the natural hair is a higher quality, but it's like, is it straight? Is it wavy? Is it curly? What we need to find the right texture of hair. Is it fine? Is it coarse? Is it, you need the right texture of hair, the right color of hair, the right blend of colors. And they're all going to be from originally they will probably all be from different people's heads. So you don't know how that particular hair is going to respond under tongs or in the wet. It might all end up in a different way. Or even when we had to color Gillian's wig, because it looked a little bit cold, a little bit too cool on her. And so we had to put a bit more warmth and then a bit more depth in the roots, and the color wouldn't take. And I was just dying because we were retinting it, and it was like, why is this not taking? And we had, I've got a brilliant colorist, and it's because the hair has been treated in different ways, and it's all from different people, even though it's been treated and baked and cleaned and done everything to be put into the wig. It was responding differently to the dyes that we were putting on it. And this is a disaster, but it all came good in the end, thanks to my brilliant colorist, Paul Haskell. But there was times I was like, I'm going to have to hand paint the roots in every day because for some reason the dye is not sticking. It was could have been a problem, but it wasn't. It was perfect, so it was good.
Again, I think it's crazy to think how much, in terms of like how dye sits with hair and the science behind it all, and the stress that it probably caused as well, knowing that why isn't this working? Why isn't it working? And then,
well, you don't tell anybody else that you're stressed. No, it was just me and Paul just sitting there going, oh, Gillian, it's all fine. Everything's going to be perfect. Don't worry about it. It was, so it was okay. But you're slowly dying inside sometimes. I hate to admit that, but it's true. So, yeah, but it's you just don't know. If in an ideal world, if you had all the actors, months and months and months in advance of the shoot, then you could have enough and loads of fitting times, and then it would be great. But it's always literally by the seat of your pants, and you're hoping that it's all going to come together on the day, and somehow it does, and that's great. But you're still bit unsure if it is or not until the last day.
And then follows the sleepless nights of how can we change it?
Yes, exactly. But yeah, no, that's always the way in my world anyway. Don't know about everybody else, but it is in mine.
I've only got we're a bit short for time, so I've got a few more
Okay.
questions that I would like to ask. What was one piece of kit that you couldn't live without during the shoot?
That's really tricky. One, because I think, well, my glasses. That would be a disaster if I lost those. And the other thing is, it's nothing. It's a sort of safety blanket thing. I've got this work belt that I had made when I was on a job in the Arctic Circle by some of the Sami reindeer herders, which is a big sort of leather belt with which I had my various bags that I put my set makeup and stuff on, and that I seem to have been every day on set for the last 15, 20 years. I've used that belt, and it's just part of me. So it's not a particular makeup thing, there's brushes obviously that you like, but again, every makeup or hair requires a certain set of different things, but that is the one thing that is always with me, I'd say.
Okay, I was expecting like a special sort of brand of like makeup, but it's the good old trusty glasses.
No, I can't because there's the grease palettes. You always have a grease palette with you or a maquillage palette because that's got all the different colors, and you can create pretty much anything out of that in a tight spot, I suppose. But I think it varies with me. Those sort of things vary completely because some jobs I don't have that. It's always there, but it's not always used. Whereas one thing that's always used is my belt that's got all the things I really need in it.
It's superhero utility belt, basically.
Exactly. It's got different things in for every job, but the belt is always that's always there. Yeah.
And then hit you my penultimate question: what was the hardest look to create?
Well, I mean, I would. It's difficult to say the hardest one because they all had their own challenges. I think getting Rufus right was probably the hardest one because if we got it wrong, it would be a disaster. But the same goes for Gillian. The same goes for Billy. If we get any element of those looks wrong because they're all based on real people, that's what everyone's going to be looking at to make sure that the detail is right and that you believe them as characters. So those three were super important. Well, obviously they're super important, but they were to get all of the details. I think were just as valid and important to get right. Yeah.
It's funny though, isn't it? It's really hard to sort of, because my next question would be what is your favorite look to create? But I feel like the hardest and favorite are very tangible questions just because, or answers, should I say, sorry.
They're all intertwined, aren't they? That's the
Yeah.
problem. They're all into the difficulty and the enjoyment is all part of the same thing, the flip side of the same coin, because if it's difficult, that's challenging. The challenge is good. If it's easy, you get complacent. I like a challenge. That's part of me, what makes this job interesting and has kept me wanting to do it. Apart from the pain of the sleepless nights and the early mornings, the fact that I've got a challenge to get up and do something interesting in the morning is great. That's what makes it fun. And when you see it come to life and you see the actors enjoying their looks and you see whether it's the rest of the crew or just even the response from the film, you're like, yeah, that was worth it. So that makes me feel good. So, it's very fulfilling when you do a job and you think, yeah, I think we nailed that. That's really nice. Doesn't always happen, but I think on this one, it's, yeah. So all of the looks are great to do, all of them, because they've all such good characters to actually create.
That is definitely a very good answer, because that's the sort of like, so when somebody asks who's your favorite child, and then you're like, all of them. Let's go with that. All of them.
Yeah, well, it's true. They've all got, they've all got their idiosyncrasies and their plus points and possibly their minus, but no minus on this.
I think as well, like, when there must be days where you're like, this is my favorite one, and then other days where it's like, this is not my favorite one because it's causing me too much annoyance, or
I
it's not
don't really think of
working.
them as favorites. It's not you can sit going, oh, I love it. You just go, you might say, I love the way the hair is moving today, or I love, it just all works. But it's, I don't know. I don't sit back and go, wow, this is great. You're just like, okay, that worked. Now what's the next giant problem I've got to try and solve? so, so, there's a very little time to sort of, I suppose, sit back and enjoy, because when you're actually filming, because there's always something else that needs to be dealt with. And when you do see the pictures and you do think you've got it, then it's great.
Do you ever find, because whilst you're working, sorry, this will promise to be my final question.
I don't know.
Whilst you're working, because you're constantly sort of trying to stay ahead of the shoot, and that you know that there's something else to do, is there times like now when you kind of sit back and actually look and think, wow, like, we absolutely nailed it here. We did this here. I know you mentioned as well, there'll be things that you might still pick on because you're a perfectionist, but is there a time when you just like, we absolutely nailed it. I'm really happy that
Well,
this is
I
done
think,
this way.
I think when you see something, I mean, I'm very proud of Scoop. I think it's a great film. I think it's very well directed by Philip Martin, and I think the acting is superb. And I think, the set design, the cinematography, editing, the music, the whole lot. I just was like, when I first saw it, I just thought, this is a really well crafted film. It's got a great story. It's got an interesting aspect to the, it's not just about the interview. It's about the journalism. It's about all those women. It's about all of that side of what goes on behind the scenes. And I think it's a great piece of filmmaking, and it's a great piece of storytelling. So that makes me very happy. And I can sit back and go, yeah, I'm really proud of that. So that's really nice. And sometimes you're not so proud of things, but for whatever reason. But in this one, yeah, I'm happy. I'm pretty happy with it.
Okay, well, that's always good to like end on a really nice. It's a perfect way to sort of end the episode.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Kirstin, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Scoop is streaming now on Netflix. Go out and watch Kirstin and her team's work, and enjoy it. And I'll link as well to the transformation of Rufus to Prince Andrew in the show notes. Thank you again, Kirstin. You take care, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.